Veterans scare teams because of what they know. Young stars like Macklin Celebrini scare the NHL because they have not learned where the ceiling is supposed to be. That is the part that makes a player like Celebrini feel different. A veteran can beat you with memory. He has seen every trap, every matchup, every road building, every desperate coach throwing a checking line at him with one job. He knows when to slow a game down. He knows when a defenseman is about to panic. He knows how to steal a faceoff, protect a lead, draw a penalty, survive a bad shift, and still be useful when his legs are not fresh. That is dangerous, but it is also understandable. The league has a file on veterans. Teams know their habits. Scouts know their favorite routes. Goalies know where the shot usually comes from. Coaches know what kind of pressure makes them uncomfortable. The threat is real, but it has shape. A young star is different. A young star arrives before the league has finished building the file. Celebrini is scary because he does not look like a long-term project waiting for permission. He looks like a player who walked into one of the hardest leagues on earth and immediately started asking a rude question. What if the timeline is wrong? What if a franchise does not need to wait years for its new center to matter? What if the future is not coming later? What if it is already taking face-offs, attacking the middle, and forcing veterans to react instead of control? That is why players like Celebrini make the NHL nervous in a way older stars do not. Veterans carry answers. Young stars carry problems the league has not solved yet. And the most frightening problem in hockey is not the player who knows everything. It is the player learning faster than everyone else can adjust. Celebrini does not look scary because he is perfect. He looks scary because he is already useful while still becoming dangerous. That is the difference between hype and threat. Hype is a highlight package. Hype is one beautiful rush, one viral goal, one clip where the defender gets embarrassed and everyone pretends the entire future has been solved. Threat is different. Threat survives the boring parts of a game. Threat shows up when the breakout is messy, when the matchup is ugly, when the puck is bouncing, when the team around him is not giving him a clean runway. That is where Celebrini becomes interesting. He plays center, and center is not a decorative position. A winger can disappear for a shift and still wait for one chance. A center has to live inside the machinery. He has to support low in the defensive zone, connect the breakout, arrive underneath the puck, read pressure through the middle, take contact, win space, and still have enough skill left to create offense when the ice gets crowded. For a young player, that is a brutal job description. For Celebrini, it already looks natural. He does not need the game to become simple before he matters. He can touch the puck under pressure and turn panic into structure. He can receive a pass with the defender closing, move it before the hit arrives, then appear again in the next layer of the play. He does not just skate fast, he processes fast. That matters more. Speed makes defenders back up. Processing makes them hesitate, and hesitation is where elite players make money. The scary thing is that Celebrini is not only creating offense from clean possession, he is creating it from broken plays, loose pucks, half wins, failed exits, neutral zone scrambles. Those moments are where bad teams usually die, because one mistake becomes another, then the shift collapses. A young franchise center changes that equation. He gives chaos an outlet. That is why the league pays attention. Not because every shift is spectacular, because even when the shift is not spectacular, he is already changing the temperature of it. A loose puck becomes a controlled entry. A defensive retrieval becomes transition. A harmless touch becomes a dangerous second touch. A veteran defender who expected time suddenly has none. That is what scares teams, not the idea that Celebrini will one day become a problem. The realization that he already is one and the full version has not arrived yet. The main difference between a veteran star and a young star is not age, it is gravity. A veteran usually bends the game through experience. He understands where pressure comes from. He knows when to save energy, when to attack, when to slow the puck against the wall and let the shift breathe. He can feel a matchup changing before the crowd notices. He has learned the invisible parts of hockey, the little delays, the quiet stick positions, the body angles that turn danger into control. That kind of player is terrifying because he has answers. But a young star like Celebrini is terrifying because he changes the questions. Veterans often master the system. Young stars force the system to explain itself. A coach sends a checking line over the boards, and the old plan says, take away time. Lean on him. Finish every contact. Make him defend. Make him think. Make him feel the weight of the league. But what happens when the young player already thinks at that speed? What happens when he does not need the perfect lane? What happens when pressure does not make him rush, but makes him sharper? That is where the fear begins. A veteran can be studied. His habits become patterns. His patterns become scouting reports. Over time, the league builds a map. Maybe he likes to curl off the right wall. Maybe he waits for the late trailer. Maybe he protects the puck on his backhand before slipping it into the slot. The details are elite, but they are details the league has had time to collect. With a young star, the map keeps changing. 1 month, he is learning which defenders can be attacked wide. The next month, he is pulling up earlier. Then he starts using the middle more. Then he starts drawing coverage and passing through it instead of around it. The player the league prepared for in October is not the same player it faces later in the season. That is the problem. Development is not happening in private anymore. It is happening live, inside NHL games, against grown men who are trying to punish every mistake. And when a player can grow while surviving that, he becomes more than talented. He becomes unstable for the league. Not unstable emotionally, unstable tactically. You cannot lock him into one version. You cannot say, this is what he is. You cannot build one answer and expect it to hold. Every adjustment you make becomes part of his education. Every trap teaches him a route. Every hit teaches him timing. Every difficult matchup gives him another page in a book he is writing faster than opponents can read. That is why young stars scare the NHL. They are not just playing games. They are uploading information. And every night, the file gets harder to defend. The NHL is not afraid of youth by itself. Youth has always been in the league. Every generation has had teenagers with soft hands, fast feet, and a scouting report full of promises. Some became stars, some became cautionary tales, some looked electric for 1 month, then discovered that the league is a machine built to find weakness. What scares the modern NHL is not that young players are arriving. It is how prepared they are when they arrive. The old idea was simple. A prospect needed time. Time to build strength. Time to learn defense. Time to understand travel. Time to stop making junior habits against professional structure. Time to realize that every defender in the NHL is not just big, but trained, informed, and waiting. That used to be the wall. Now the best young stars hit that wall and start climbing immediately. Celebrini represents that shift. He is not entering the league like a raw talent who only knows how to dominate weaker competition. He already understands the language of modern hockey. Support the puck. Attack inside ice. Escape pressure early. Use speed changes instead of only straight line speed. Read the second defender. Recover above the puck. Turn defense into offense before the opponent has time to reset. That is not normal teenage instinct. That is training. Modern prospects are built in environments that look closer to professional factories than old school development paths. They grow up with video analysis, skill coaches, skating coaches, nutrition plans, strength programs, mental performance work, summer camps with NHL players, detailed feedback after every tournament, every shift, every mistake. By the time they reach the league, the shock is still real, but it is not the same shock. They have already been taught how to learn. That is the dangerous part. A veteran can still be stronger. He can still be calmer. He can still know tricks the kid has not seen. But the gap closes faster now because the young player is not starting from ignorance. He is starting from a professional foundation and adding NHL experience on top of it every night. So when a player like Celebrini struggles, it does not always look like failure. It looks like data collection. A lost faceoff becomes a lesson. A heavy hit becomes a timing adjustment. A blocked passing lane becomes a new deception. A shift trapped in the defensive zone becomes a reminder of where support needs to be. The league used to have time to humble young talent. Now young talent uses the humbling as fuel. That is why adaptation is the real fear. Not speed, not skill, not even confidence. The fear is a player who can be challenged on Monday, solve part of it by Wednesday, and make the same pressure look outdated by the next time he sees it. Celebrini is not just dangerous as a scorer. He is dangerous because he plays the position that lets a franchise dream bigger. A winger can become the face of a rebuild. A defenseman can become the backbone of one. A goalie can rescue one. But an elite center can become the operating system. That is the piece every team wants and almost no team can find on command. Because a true franchise center does not only finish plays, he starts them, connects them, repairs them, and gives every other player on the ice a cleaner job. That is why Celebrini matters so much to San Jose. He is not only a young player with talent, he is a possible answer to the most expensive question in hockey. Who controls the middle? The middle is where the sport becomes honest. It is where speed meets traffic. It is where turnovers become disasters. It is where weak decisions get punished instantly. A player can look flashy on the outside, but the middle asks for something deeper. Timing, courage, scanning, balance, touch under pressure. The ability to take information from every direction and still make the next play feel calm. Celebrini has the profile teams built around because he can affect all of those layers. On the power play, he can become the decision point. Not just the shooter, not just the bumper. The player who makes defenders lean one way, then punishes the space they reveal. At even strength, he can drive tempo through entries, support low in the zone, and turn defensive stops into immediate transition. In the locker room, he can become the emotional symbol of a new timeline, the proof that the rebuild is not just pain with a marketing slogan attached. And commercially, the effect matters too. A rebuilding team needs hope people can see. Not abstract hope, not draft picks buried in future charts. A real player, a name on jerseys. A reason to watch a Tuesday night game when the standings are ugly. A reason for fans to say, maybe this is where it starts. That is what makes a young franchise center terrifying to the rest of the league. He changes the math before the team is even finished. The Sharks do not need Celebrini to be a complete superstar tomorrow for him to matter today. They need him to give the organization a center of gravity, a place where prospects can connect, a player veterans can support, a future free agent can look at and think, there is something forming there. That is power, not just points, architecture. And when a teenager can become architecture, the league starts paying attention. Because now the rebuild has a heartbeat. Young stars scare the NHL because they create unfair timing. Not unfair inside one shift, unfair inside the business of the league. A veteran star is expensive. Everyone knows what he costs. Everyone knows what he is. His contract already reflects his power. If he changes a team, he usually changes it at a price that makes sense to the market. The league can understand that kind of threat. It is dangerous, but it is accounted for. A young star on an entry-level deal is different. That is where the fear becomes structural. If a player like Celebrini can produce real impact before his salary catches up to his value, the team around him suddenly gets a window it did not expect to open so quickly. The front office can spend elsewhere, the roster can improve faster, the rebuild can skip steps. A team that was supposed to be patient can start becoming annoying before the rest of the league is ready. That is not just a hockey problem. That is a competitive balance problem. Because every great young player gives his team two gifts at the same time, performance and flexibility. He brings offense, attention, pace, and belief. But he also brings surplus value, which might be the most dangerous phrase in a salary cap league. It means the player is giving more than the contract is taking. It means the team can buy help around him while the star is still cheaper than his influence. That is how timelines get broken. A rebuilding team is supposed to suffer in public, collect talent, lose ugly games, and slowly become credible. But a young franchise player can compress that pain. He can make veterans more useful. He can make prospects look closer. He can make fans return before the standings fully deserve it. He can make management aggressive earlier than planned. And the rest of the league hates that. Because veterans are predictable assets. Young stars are accelerants. They do not only improve a team, they speed up every decision around it. Should the front office add a scorer now? Should it protect the young center with a real winger? Should it trade futures for help? Should it raise expectations before the room is ready? Should it sell patience to fans who can already see the spark? That is pressure. Celebrini does not need to carry San Jose to the top overnight to scare the NHL. He only needs to make the timeline feel alive. Once that happens, Opponents stop seeing a bad team with a good prospect. They start seeing a bad team with an engine. And an engine changes everything. It makes the rebuild louder. It makes the market watch closer. It makes every future matchup feel less like a scheduled win and more like a warning. The veteran star is a finished weapon. The young star is a weapon still being built while it is already firing. That is why the league looks at players like Celebrini differently. Not because they are safe bets, because if they hit early, the entire league has to adjust early. The NHL is not only getting younger, it is getting younger in a different way. There have always been talented kids. There have always been top picks with pressure on their backs, and cameras following their first steps. But the new wave does not arrive with the same body language. They do not look like guests. They do not look like prospects waiting for the league to approve them. They arrive like the game already belongs partly to them. That is the trend Celebrini fits into. Connor Bedard did not enter the league as a quiet experiment. Adam Fantilli did not look like a player built for patience. Matvei Michkov brought creativity that does not ask permission. Lane Hutson showed how a young defenseman can change the rhythm of possession without being built like an old-school bruiser. Will Smith arrived with the kind of skill package that belongs to a league where deception is becoming as important as strength. Different players, different teams, same message. The next generation is not waiting in line, and this scares the NHL because the league used to be better at slowing young players down. Coaches could bury them on lower lines. Veterans could expose their habits. Defenders could punish every cute play. The schedule could drain them. The media could overwhelm them. The second half of the season could reveal that the kid was not ready for the grind. That still happens, but it does not happen as cleanly anymore. The best young players arrive with answers to problems they have not even faced yet. They know how to manipulate gaps. They understand weak side space. They use delays, shoulder fakes, weight shifts, reverse passes, and soft area touches like tools, not tricks. They are not just fast skaters, they are fast editors. They cut the play in their mind before everyone else finishes reading the sentence. That is why the league feels different. The older NHL was often built around territory. Win the wall, own the crease, punish the middle, make the opponent pay for every inch. Those things still matter, but the new NHL adds another layer. Change the angle before contact arrives. Use pressure against itself. Turn a defender's aggression into the opening. Make the safe play look predictable and the risky play look controlled. Young stars are fluent in that language because they grew up inside it. They watched skill clips before they were drafted. They trained edge work before they had a driver's license. They studied habits that older players had to discover slowly through failure. Their creativity is not random. It is rehearsed chaos. That is the scary part. A veteran can tell a young player, this is how the league works. But the young player can answer without saying a word. Not anymore. Veterans struggle with young stars because young stars do not always attack the game in the old order. The old order was readable. Win the draw, get the puck deep, establish the forecheck, finish checks, protect the slot, make the safe play under pressure, earn your chance, repeat until the opponent breaks. That language still matters. No team survives without structure. No young star gets freedom forever if he cannot respect the details. But the newest elite players are dangerous because they bend structure without fully leaving it. They do not simply rebel against the system, they hack it. A veteran defender might know where a normal rush is supposed to go. Outside lane, body contact, angle to the boards, stick in the passing lane, force the puck carrier into a low percentage play. Then a player like Celebrini changes the rhythm. He attacks wide just long enough to make the defender open his hips. Then he cuts inside. Or he shows speed, then slows down. Or he looks past, waits for the stick to move, and turns the delay into a shooting lane. Or he enters with control, gives the puck up early, and arrives again as the second problem instead of the first one. That is hard to defend because it attacks prediction. Veterans often win by knowing what comes next. Young stars scare them by making next feel unstable. The deception is not always flashy. Sometimes it is one shoulder drop, one half-second delay, one little pull of the puck toward the body before sending it through a lane that did not exist a breath earlier. It can be a pass into space instead of onto a stick. It can be a button hook that turns pressure into confusion. It can be the confidence to hold the puck in the middle for one extra instant while everyone else in the building wants the safe play. That extra instant is where the NHL gets uncomfortable, because older players are trained to punish hesitation, but the best young players are not hesitating. They are baiting. They invite pressure, then move it. They let a defender think the play is dying, then release it to the weak side. They use contact as information. They use mistakes as bait for the next touch. They are not fearless because they do not understand danger. They are fearless because they process danger quickly enough to use it. That is why experience can become a trap. A veteran may know the league, but sometimes he knows the version of the league that existed before these players learned to turn pressure into a canvas. And when the kid is not playing by the old script, the veteran has to do something he hates: react. There is one reason young stars scare the NHL that nobody likes to say out loud. They are still fragile. Not fragile in talent, not fragile in confidence, not fragile in the way fans sometimes use the word when they want to call a player soft. Fragile in the way every rare thing is fragile when too many people start reaching for it at the same time. A player like Celebrini does not only carry a stick, he carries a rebuild, a market, a fan base that has been waiting for a reason to believe, a front office that needs its plan to look real, a coaching staff trying to develop him without drowning him, a league that wants young faces, young highlights, young energy, and young stars who can sell the next version of the sport. That is a lot to put on one pair of skates, and the danger is not always the hit you see coming. Sometimes the danger is expectation. The kid scores, and people want more. He struggles, and people ask what is wrong. He has a quiet week, and the conversation turns into pressure. He makes one mistake in overtime, and the clip travels farther than the lesson. He has one brilliant month, and suddenly patience disappears from the building. That is how a franchise can burn a gift, not through cruelty, through hunger. Young stars need minutes, but not chaos. They need responsibility, but not panic. They need hard matchups, but not endless punishment. They need leadership, but not the fake kind where a teenager is asked to save adults from bad planning. The NHL fears these players because they can transform a team, but also because everyone knows how easy it is to ask too much before the body and mind are ready. The physical side is real too. The schedule is heavier than hype. The travel is heavier than junior dreams. The strength of NHL players is different. The small collisions add up. The second night of a back-to-back teaches lessons no skill coach can fully simulate. A young star can look fearless in October and exhausted later. Not because the talent vanished, but because the league is built to grind talent down. That is why the smartest teams protect the future without hiding it. They give the player room to fail without turning every mistake into a referendum. They surround him with adults who can take defensive shifts, media heat, and emotional weight. They do not confuse marketing with development. They understand that the goal is not to squeeze every drop from the kid immediately. The goal is to make sure the frightening version actually arrives. Because the NHL is full of stories about promise. The rarest stories are about promise that survives the pressure long enough to become power. Veterans scare teams because they have already become something. Young stars scare the NHL because they are still becoming something, and nobody knows where the becoming stops. That is the difference. A veteran star enters the rink with a reputation the league can measure. He has a history, a role, a contract, a style, a book. Opponents may fear him, but they understand the shape of the fear. They know where he likes the puck. They know which matchups hurt him. They know what kind of night gives him trouble. Even greatness becomes familiar when the league has studied it long enough. Celebrini is frightening in a different way. He is not finished enough to be trapped by one definition. That is why the league watches him so closely. Not because every shift is perfect, not because every mistake has vanished, not because he's already the complete answer to everything San Jose needs. The scary part is simpler. He is already important before he is complete. That is the kind of player who changes a franchise's emotional weather. A losing team feels less hopeless, a rebuild feels less abstract, a fan base stops watching only for the future and starts watching because the future is touching the puck right now. Opponents stop seeing a soft game on the schedule and start seeing a young center who can make one ordinary shift feel dangerous. This is the trend behind the whole league. The NHL is no longer waiting for players to become adults before they become problems. The best young stars arrive with skill, structure, confidence, training, and a terrifying ability to learn in public. They do not need the league to slow down for them. They use the league as the classroom, and every veteran trying to teach them a lesson accidentally gives them another tool. That is why they scare people. Not because they disrespect the old game, because they reveal how fast the new one is moving. A veteran can punish you with knowledge. A young star can punish you with evolution. Today, he learns your pressure. Tomorrow, he solves part of it. The next time you see him, the same trick does not work the same way. That is the nightmare. Not one great night. Not one beautiful goal. Not one viral clip. The nightmare is the curve. The league can handle talent. It can handle speed. It can handle confidence. What it cannot comfortably handle is a player whose growth is faster than the scouting report. And that is why Macklin Celebrini represents more than one prospect, one market, or one rebuild. He represents the new fear in hockey. The fear that the most dangerous player on the ice might not be the one with the longest resume, the loudest reputation, or the most polished legacy. It might be the kid who is still learning what he can get away with. The kid who has not accepted the ceiling. The kid who makes veterans look over their shoulders and realize the future is not chasing them anymore. It is already here.